Shabbat Shalom, everybody. We are going to begin with a Sephardic song called Buena Semana, which means good week. It's a Sephardic song from Morocco. So we will begin in a moment.
Buena semana nos del Dio, buena semana nos del Dio, buena semana nos del Dio, buena semana. Buena semana nos del Dio, buena semana. A mis hijos bien decir, a mis hijos bien decir, que me los deje el Dios vivir buena semana. Que me los deje el Dios vivir buena semana. Para fadar y circuncir, para fadar y circuncir, y poner tefelín buena semana. Y poner tefelín buena semana. Buena semana.
Aren't we grateful for circumcisions? Very funny song. So to light our candles, we are very pleased to have Carol Castaneda.
As these Shabbat candles give light to all who behold them, so may we, by our lives, give light to all who behold us. As their brightness reminds us of the generations of Israel who have kindled light, so may we, in our own day, be among those who kindle light. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat.
Thank you, Carol. Nicely done. And Elliot is going to lead us in the Kiddush.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kishanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shabbat kodsho be'avat uvratzon hinchilanu zikaronon lema'aseh bereshit. Ki hu yom techila lemikra kodesh zecher litziat Mitzrayim ki vanu v'acharta ve'otanu kidashta mikol ha'amim Shabbat kodecha be'ahava u'baratzon hinchaltanu Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh haShabbat. Amen.
L'chaim. So our Torah portion for this week is called Shmini, which means the 8th day, and it includes a very disturbing story. This is the moment when the tabernacle is being dedicated, and Aaron, the high priest, has two sons named Nadav and Avihu, and they bring what is referred to as, quote, alien fire to the altar. As a result, they are zapped by a fire issued from God and killed. Now, what is this all about? After all, the tabernacle has just been inaugurated, and they are the sons of the high priest. What did they do wrong? 18th century Moroccan Talmudist and Kabbalist Chaim ben Moses ibn Attar understands Nadav and Avihu to be driven by a desire to pursue God that could not be contained by established boundaries. Ibn Attar points to the verse that reads, "The Lord spoke to Moses after the death of the two sons of Aaron, who died when they drew too close to the presence of God." He writes, "They approached the supernal light out of their great love of the holy and thereby died. Thus they died by divine kiss, such as experienced by the perfectly righteous. The difference is only that the righteous die when the divine kiss approaches them, while Nadav and Avihu died by their approaching it." In other words, Nadav and Avihu's deaths were a result of loving God too much. As a contemporary commentator points out, their story illustrates that the boundaries for worship established through God's instructions to Moses are designed in part to prevent people from becoming consumed by their passion for the divine. Significantly, Rashi understands Nadav and Avihu's destruction to be one of the soul, but not of the body. Commenting on the description of the deceased men being carried from the camp by their tunics, Rashi writes, "This tells us that their garments had not been destroyed by fire, but only their souls, as if two strands of fire had entered their nostrils. Nadav and Avihu's clothing and bodies remained intact with no signs of burning. They had been struck by fire inwardly. Thus, we are warned to channel our passion for the holy in ways that are not self-destructive." We continue with another story of the death of a son. This is the death of King David's son, the death of Absalom. And this is a song called Triste el Rey David, another Kabbalat Shabbat song that is Sephardic.
Trista está el rey David, triste está de corazón, que lo mataron a su hijo, al su hijo Absalón, por desechar las sus angustias, afuera él ya salió, alzó sus ojos a lo lejos, ande despunta el sol. Ven aquí la mi mujer, te preto vos vistas vos, que lo mataron al mi hijo, al su hijo Absalón.
So when Nadav and Avihu die, the story concludes by telling us that Aaron, their father, was silent. Does this mean that Aaron accepted God's judgment? Indeed, Midrash Rabbah, an interpretation of the Torah, tells us that Aaron's silence was rewarded with exclusive communication with God. Rabbi John Summer of the Bay Area Healing Center suggests that we could understand Midrash Rabbah to mean that Aaron's silent acceptance in the face of horror was a sort of blind obedience required by a zealous God. The tradition, however, suggests an understanding of Aaron's silence as something which transcends unquestioning obedience. The Hasidic master, Rabbi Nachman of Breslov, reflects that silence is a higher form of engagement with the world and can move us beyond more limiting forms of communication and expression. Aaron's loss is profound. What words would be sufficient? What songs could possibly be appropriate? In his silence, however, we can read much. Machatzi Kaddish.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה, תעלמא דברה חירותי וימליך מלכותי, בחייכון וביומכון ובחיי לכל בית ישראל, בגלה בגלה ובזמן קריב ואמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך לעלם ולעלמי עלמיה, יתברך יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומן ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקודשה בריחו לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, דמירן בעלמה, ואמרו Amen.
We continue with the call to worship, the Baruch Hu.
Please repeat each phrase as I sing it. Baruch Hu, Baruch Hu, et Adonai, ha-mevorach, ha-mevorach, Baruch Adonai, ha-mevorach, ha-mevorach, le'olam, le'olam, va'ed, va'ed. Baruch Hu et Adonai ha-mevorach, Baruch Hu et Adonai ha-mevorach. Baruch Adonai ha-mevorach, le'olam va'ed. Baruch Adonai ha-mevorach, le'olam va'ed.
This is a prayer by Rabbi Yael Saidoff. Caretaker of the world, before we were here to acknowledge you, your presence dwelled in the vastness of time. Eternity ebbed and flowed, and formless space stood still. All of the universe's potential was held in your hand. And then you thought, how precious is existence, how right it is to be free. But how can I bestow the freedom of infinity? Form is limited by beginning and end. An aching longing became intent, and then a plan, and then a blueprint, a map of existence that led to creation and back to the source of all life. Then you placed in each a spark, a light just bright enough to illuminate the map. Lovingly, you watch, even to this day, the beings that you keep in the warmth of your grace. And every night when your creations lie down to rest, you place them in the palm of your hand and whisper in their ears, infinity. Ahavat Olam is about God's love for us, so much so that God gave us Torah.
Ahavat Olam Bet Yisrael, Amehavta מצוות, חוקים ומשפטים, אותנו למדת. על כן אדוני אלוהינו, בשוכבנו ובקומנו, נצליח בחוקיך, ונשמח בדברי תורתך ובמצוותיך לעולם ועד, כי הם חיינו ואורך ימינו, ובהם נהגה ימם ולילה.
We continue with the Shema, the statement of God's oneness.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. 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 Baruch Shem Kevod Lachuto, Le'olam va'ed. Shem Kevod Lachuto, Le'olam va'ed. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
And Carol Lee, would you lead us in the Ve'ahavta, please?
Everybody join me. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha u'chol nafshecha u'chol meotecha v'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavcha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam v'shiftecha b'veitecha uvlechtecha v'derech uvshochbecha uvkumecha uvshartam leod al yadecha v'hayu letotafot b'neinecha uchtabtam al mezuzot beitecha uvisharecha laman tiskaru v'asitem et kol mitzvotai v'yitem kedoshim le'elohechem ani Adonai Elohechem asher hotzeti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim Liot lachem Elohim ani Adonai Elohechem.
Thank you, Carol Lee.
Again, my pleasure.
This is a piece by Ruth Bryn about this particular Torah portion. It's called "The Priests Begin Their Work." Though many of the ways of our fathers have been burned away by time, we Jews are not consumed. Though priest and Levite have burned away, holiness and purity are not consumed, and the distinction between the clean and the unclean remains. The sin offering and the guilt offering have burned away, but justice is not consumed. Though ark and temple are turned to ashes, worship is not consumed. Lord God, you hold in your hand the 12 tribes like the precious stones on the breastplate of the high priest. You hold all the people of the earth like a handful of jewels. Though we cannot penetrate the mysteries that are in ourselves and beyond ourselves, teach us for all time the unity of these: justice, purity, holiness, and the worship of you. We continue with the world premiere of the Micha Mocha as written by Elliot Levine. We are so fortunate to have people like Elliot in our congregation who writes original music and allows us to be the forum for premiering it. Thank you, Elliot. So the end of this week's Torah portion, Shmini, gives us a detailed description of the kosher laws. Well, what is the connection between the consecration of the priests, the death of Nadav and Avihu, and kashrut? Priests are in charge of maintaining the holiness of the tabernacle, the movable sanctuary. The kosher laws allow us to bring holiness into our daily lives. Once the temple was destroyed, our tables became the Mikdash Me'at, the small temple. As one commentator puts it, a most fundamental, ostensibly mundane act, the act of eating, is sanctified with strict regulations and limits, not necessarily based on health concerns, but rather as a way of reminding the Israelites of the relationship between God and the people of Israel. Holiness is not restricted to ceremonial events or history-making moments. Holiness is ultimately an everyday challenge. It is relatively easy to experience the sacred on the day that you become a bar or bat mitzvah or on your wedding day. The challenge is to seek and find holiness on the day after the public ceremony at home with the people you love. We continue with Yismahu, our celebration of Shabbat.
ישמחו במלכותך, ישמחו במלכותך, שומרי שבת וקוראי עונג, עונג שבת. ישמחו במלכותך, ישמחו במלכותך, שומרי שבת וקוראי עונג, עונג שבת. מקדשי שבי, מקדשי שבי שבת, כולם ישמעו ויתענגו מטובך שבת. ישמחו במלכותך, ישמחו במלכותך, שומרי שבת וקוראי עונג, עונג שבת. והשבי רצית בו וקידשתו שבת, חנדת ימים אותו קראת שבת. ישמחו במלכותך, ישמחו במלכותך, שומרי שבת וקוראי עונג, עונג שבת.
We continue with the tefillah, the standing prayer, for which we may be sitting.
Adonai sefatai tiftach, ufi yagi tehilatecha. Eternal God, open my lips, that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu v'Elohei avoteinu v'imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, v'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, v'Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanora, Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, וקונה הכל, וזוכר חסדי אבות ואימהות, ומביא גאולה לבני בניהם, למען שמו באהבה, מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן. ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם ועזרת שרה. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיה הכל אתה רב להושיע. מחכה חיים בחסד, מחיה הכל ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לפשעי עפר. מי כמוך בעל גבורות, ומי דומה לך? מלך ממית ומחיה, ומצמיח ישועה, ונאמן אתה לחיות הכל. ברוך אתה אדוני מחיה הכל. אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש, וקדושים בכל יום יהללוך סלה. ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש.
We take a moment for silent prayer. We conclude the tefillah with Oseh Shalom, a prayer for peace.
Oseh Shalom bimromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'imru amen. Oseh shalom bimromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'imru amen. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael.
Elliot, I hope you look in the chat to see all the lovely comments that are being made about your music tonight.
Thank you.
So we're in the period between Passover and Shavuot, two harvest festivals, and we do something that's called counting the Omer. So in the olden days when we had a temple, we would bring an Omer, a measure of barley, to the temple as a sacrifice. And since we don't have the temple anymore, we still count the days between Passover and Shavuot. And it is the period of time that we are preparing ourselves from liberation in Egypt to the receiving of the Torah at Mount Sinai. And the Kabbalists, those who are the more mystical folks in our tradition, look at this as a process of improving our personalities, our characters. And so every week there's a different midah, character trait that we emphasize. And this week the midah is gevurah, strength. So we need to think about our strength and how we apply that. So we are going to say the blessing for counting the Omer. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al sefirat haomer. Blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe, who has sanctified us with his commandments and commanded us concerning the counting of the Omer. And we mention what day it is. Hayom shlosha asar yom shehem shavua echad v'shisha yamim laomer. Today is 13 days, which is 1 week and 6 days of the Omer. Now, the other thing that we do during this period of time is we read different chapters of Pirkei Avot, the ethics of the fathers. Every week we read one chapter. So we're on chapter 2 this week. And I pulled out a particular passage that I really relate to. And so Andrea, who's doing a fabulous job tonight, this is the first time that Andrea Sherman has actually done the tech for our service, and she is doing a marvelous job. Thank you, Andrea. I'm going to read the names of people that we're thinking about this evening. And these are names of people who are either congregants or friends and family of congregants. Jonathan Davidson, Ben Henderson, Kara Gilman, Rabbi Steve Robbins, Gloria Mangus, Steve Lux, Leslie Ferris, Julie Lapidus, Pamela Mangus, Johnny Sikat, Dennis Boylan, Gary Droutman, Irene Sherman, Sandy Schneider, Roberta Gershon, Bill Oppenheim, Reverend Jane Quant. And if you'd like to put more names in the chat or unmute yourselves, please do so. So let me go back up here. Richard Bainey, June Carpenter, Peter Thorne, Diana Anderson, Amy Morton, Solomon Fishman, Joan Bertoli, Art Ochoa, Elaine Burke, Jackson Griffin, Diane Fritsch,
Kirsten Malaku.
Bob Litt. Anybody else? Janice Parsley, Alan Mason, Robert Helmbrecht, so please join us in the Misha Berach, the prayer for healing.
Misha Berach Avotenu Mekol HaBracha Leimotenu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Misha Berach Imotenu Mekol HaBracha Lavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shelema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen.
So Andrea, now if you would share that screen of the Pirkei Avot quote. So Rabbi Elazar said, be diligent in the study of the Torah. Rabbi Tarfon said, the day is short and the work is plentiful and the laborers are indolent and the reward is great and the master of the house is insistent. Master of the house, of course, is God. And Rabbi Tarfon used to say, it is not your duty to finish the work, but neither are you at liberty to neglect it. If you have studied much Torah, you shall be given much reward. So what I want to focus on here is the idea that it is not your duty to finish the work, but neither are you at liberty to neglect it. He's speaking, of course, specifically about the Torah here, but this is often taken out of context and applied to other things other than study of Torah. So what I want to do tonight is do some breakout groups. And I want you to talk about what work is it that needs to be done and how are you able to get started on the work and be okay with not finishing it, because we know there's so much out there that needs to be done on various levels. And we often feel guilty because, well, I can't do it all. I can't finish it. Let's remember, by the way, that the Torah ends with the Israelites on the verge of entering the promised land, but they never actually enter, which I think is a beautiful existential metaphor for what our lives are like. We always strive to get someplace, we never completely get there. And if we do, we have another place we want to get to. Okay, so I'm going to divide us up into breakout groups. And where are they? They've disappeared. Here we are. Okay, I think I'll do like 5 rooms. And please talk for a few minutes and then we'll share some of the insights that you have. So I'm going to create them and you can join the room that you've been assigned to. My question was, did anybody come up with anything interesting in their group or something they'd like to share?
4 of the 5 people in our group have known each other for 50 years. That's what we
Yes.
came up
Okay, obviously you follow directions well.
with.
Well, actually, you know what? I mean, I kind of thought, all right, I'll give you a prompt that you can talk about, but if you just want to chat, that's okay too, since we haven't had a chance to see each other all that much. But I just wondered if anybody would like to share something. You can share something other than what I asked. Obviously, you know, maybe nobody talked about what I asked you to talk about, except my group, because I led it.
I'll go ahead and jump in, Rabbi.
Thank you.
No one else has yet. We had an active group on the subject,
Good.
and I had said something that we're working on, to me quite obviously, is ourselves, that we're constantly working on ourselves, and as our life change, we almost start over and start that work over, but it's never ending. It certainly can't be ignored. It's not something you can just stop working on. You never finish, and as your life changes, like I said, you may even find yourself starting over, but you can't ignore it. You know,
Nice.
It's not something you can't do. And then Jason, I don't know if he's going to come off. Jason jumped in with some excellent comments. I don't want to put him on the spot, but we had a good conversation on the subject.
Jason, you want to share? Or I know he had a second shot yesterday, so he's not feeling all that.
I was going to say, feel free to paraphrase, Steve, if you like. We were just talking about things that are small pieces that make the world a better place, and that a lot of the commandments are really designed to make you take small steps. You can't erase sadness in the world, but you can attend a shiva. You know, you can hold a door for somebody. You know, you can. These are the very basic things that you can do that make people, you know, that make the world better. But we're not going to create justice by ourselves, but we shouldn't feel as though it's not part of our work to do just things. That makes sense?
Nice, very nice. Great. Thank you for sharing that. Anybody else want to share? Susan.
So, you know, one of the things we had talked about was, you know, since you can't finish everything, it's to teach the next generation what to do, or if, like, when you're in an organization, you teach the next group of people coming in so that they can carry on with the work.
Nice. Very
almost like-
nice.
We're talking like with recycling, how you have to keep things going, and it's not going to keep going unless you teach the next generation, the next group coming in, what to do.
Very nice.
You've done that, Susan.
Yeah, well, I learned from my parents.
Right. You taught your children.
Yeah.
That's very nice.
good.
Very nice. I like these comments. Any more? Dan.
We talked about the homeless program, homelessness, and about the difficulty of bringing about change. The problem just gets worse.
Yeah.
And, that people who are professionally involved in it have accomplished a lot on a local basis, but on the state basis, not so much. So it's been an education for me, even though I haven't felt that I've contributed very much.
Well, you have to kind of get to the point where you feel like your contribution is enough. Remember, this is what I said to the group, Dayenu, right? We have to say Dayenu, it's got to be enough. And I also told my group that Ruth Messenger, who was the head of the American Jewish World Service and is now their global ambassador, said that we do not have the luxury of being overwhelmed, right? So we could say, oh my God, there's so much, where do we start? Let's not even start at all. But if we do that, then that's luxury because there are people out there living those things.
Yeah. Okay.
So thank you. So there is a song that picks up on that line. It is not upon us to finish the work, but neither are we free to desist from it. And so Elliot, kindly enough, I'm going to ask people, by the way, to please mute because like their little dogs yapping for attention. I'm like so grateful that my dog has been quiet. Anyway, Elliot not only has written stuff and world premiered it here, but on top of that, he learned this song just a few days ago when I asked him if he knew it, and he didn't, but he learned it. So Elliot, take her away.
לא עליך חמלך לגמור, לא עליך לגמור, לא עליך חמלך לגמור, לא עליך לגמור, ולא אתה בן חורין לחבטל ממנה, ולא אתה בן חורין
Thanks so much, Elliot. Okay, any announcements? Any announcements or happy news to share? We have a sad group here.
I got my second shot.
Yay. Good for you. Good for you.
I got my first shot.
Great.
And my second shot will be on my birthday. And then I pulled something out of a Costco connection. It says that tomorrow is Siblings Day. Started in 1995. It says what the top 4 words that describe Americans' relationships with their siblings are love, support, fun, and laughter.
Oh, really? How about sometimes conflict? Right? Sometimes.
I know.
That's a very optimistic view, right?
My granddaughter got her first shot today.
Good.
She's only 19 in New York, but they gave it to her.
Susan, I liked your fourth.
On the
siblings.
Yeah, it's the laughter.
On the subject of siblings, my brother successfully had 2 metastatic tumors removed from his brain today.
Oh my goodness.
Oh,
my goodness. Oh, wow.
Wow.
I hope he's going to be okay.
We won't really know the full prognosis for a couple of weeks until they finish the pathology work, but he had 2 tumors, and I talked to him on the phone later in the
Wow.
same day. I'm going to go home tomorrow.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
It's amazing.
Obviously, they must have been benign instead of. That's
So
good.
Ruth, tell us how you got on finally. I thought you were having problems again.
She's
major problems, and then it told me to go to another site, and it asked me to see how many taxis I could identify, and that I'm not a robot. And then I got on. Don't ask me what it was. It was, it was one of these things that I'm not a robot, and
Yeah.
identify how many taxis you can see, and then I got on.
And those
It's
nine
really weird.
Oh,
That's
that's
very
amazing.
funny.
It's a
That's
security
very
feature.
funny.
Yeah, it's a capture
Hilarious.
security.
So the
Well,
only,
it was just,
yeah, I'm
There's
glad you
something-
finally were able to get through. So
well,
the only,
I'm glad.
the only announcements I have are that on Sunday is our last in the series on aging. Rabbi Richie Address is going to be speaking about a number of things, including being part of a sandwich generation, which some people are, where they're between their parents and their children, but a lot of other things as well. And he's a very knowledgeable person. He's been doing this work for many, many years. So I highly recommend it. It's on Sunday at 10. And that'll be the end of our adult ed, aside from Torah study, which is actually Tanakh study, which we'll continue not this Saturday, but next Saturday. So those are my major announcements. Anybody have any announcements to make before we go on to the Aleinu? No?
There's also the film, right?
Yes, the film, that's true. The film is part of the Yom HaShoah celebration, or commemoration rather. And if you registered, then you get some sort of password. I don't know how it works. So Hannah in the office set it up. So if you're having any issues with it, please let me know, because I'll go complain to the distributors, because I don't know why they couldn't just give us a link, why we had to get a password and all that, but yeah. Okay, so we'll continue with the Aleinu.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצא בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא, שהוא נוטה שמיים ויוסד הארץ, ומושב יקרו בשמיים ממעל, ושכינתנו זו בגובה מרמים. הוא אלוהינו אין עוד, אמת מלכנו אפס זולתו, כך כתוב בתורתו, וידעת היום והשבות אל לבבך, כי אדוני הוא האלוהים בשמיים ממעל, ועל הארץ מתחת אין עוד. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד.
We take a moment now to think of those who are no longer with us. May their memories be for a blessing. And we offer our condolences to the families of Jean Maines and Robert Doctor. Unfortunately, neither one has yet been buried, but will be soon. So it's hard to say whether they're in Shloshim or what, because they haven't been buried yet. And that's very difficult. And we have delays, of course, now because of COVID. And we're in Shloshim for David Cronenfeld's sister, Kathy Rose Baratan. Is anyone here in the first 30 days or the first year and would like to mention a name? If you'd like to put it in the chat, you may do so, or you may unmute. Let's see, Don Southard, Brenda Oppenheim, Fred Siegel, Sanford Victor, Joseph Hantman,
Heshi Glick,
Heshi Glick,
Arnie Geller,
the 4 family members of Sandy Nelson's son-in-law, Andres Velis. He lost his mother, his sister, who else was it, Sandy? Because of COVID.
His mother, his sister, her sister's husband, and his brother's wife. They all died of COVID in Lima, Peru.
Horrible, horrible.
Yes, very, very, very sad.
And we're observing yard sites for Charlotte Mann, Fannie Miller, Edith Badofsky, Arthur Kaplan, Murray Lucas, Mark Wilkerson, Charles Band, Margie Sherman, Ann Rivers,
Sure.
Tim Rosenblum, Jenny Elkin, Ray Kussner, Sophie Singer, Grace Gilman, Anna Shapiro, Herman Burke, Samuel Blacker, Marvin Goffman. Would anyone like to add a name to that list? Please feel free to unmute or to add the name in the chat. And of course, Minna Oppenheim. Of course, we think of those who perished in the Holocaust and have no one to say the mourner's Kaddish for them.
Arnie Geller,
Randy Luster's mom.
And if you'd like to unmute and join me in the mourner's Kaddish, please feel free to do so.
Gadal
Yikdash Shmei Rabbah, Belma Divra, Yamlich Malchutei, Hayachonu V'Yomechonu V'Hedek Beit Yisrael, V'Agala U'Vizman Karim, Amen.
Amen.
Yehei Shmei Rabbah Mevarach Ve'Olam Lalei Alaya, Yivarach V'Yishtabach V'Yita'ar V'Yiromam V'Yitnaseh, Yitadar V'Yitaleh V'Yitolal, Shmei D'Kusha B'Rechu, Le'ela Mikol Birchata V'Shirata, Tushbachata V'Nechemata, Da'amiran Be'alma V'Imru, Amen. Hey Shlama Rabba Min Shemaya, V'Chaim Aleinu Ve'al Kol Yisrael V'Imru, Amen. Oseh Shalom B'Mromav, Ya Aseh Shalom, Aleinu Ve'al Kol Yisrael V'Imru, Amen.
Amen.
May the source of peace send peace to all who mourn and comfort to all who are bereaved, as together we say, Amen.
Amen.
And our closing song is Adon Olam.
Adon Olam, Asher Malach B'Terem Kol Yetzir Nivra, Le'et Nasa, V'Chetzo Kol Azay Melech Shemo Nikra, Ve'acharei Kichlot HaKol, Levado Yimloch Nora, Ve'hu Haya, Ve'hu Hove, Ve'hu Yeh B'Tifara. Ve'hu שני להמשילו להחבירה בלי ראשית בלי תכלית ולעוז והמשרה והוא אלי וחי גואלי וצור חבלי בעת צרה והוא ניסי ומנוס לי מנת כוסי ביום אקרא
And that was also an original composition by Elliot Levine. So we conclude with Motzi.
Hamotzi lechem min haaretz, we give thanks to God for bread. Our voices rise in song together as our joyful prayer is said. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen.
Thank you so much, Elliot. And thank you so much, Andrea. You did such a great job. Shabbat shalom to everybody. And if you'd like
Shabbat
to
shalom,
hang,
everyone. Thank you,
shalom.
Rabbi.
Shalom.
if you'd like to hang on
Shalom.
and chat, you are more than welcome.